The following program was recorded at RELA's annual logistics conference in Orlando. I'm pleased to welcome Supply Chain Brain Editor Emeritus, Jean Murphy.
Hello. Today I'm speaking with Matthew Minner, Senior Vice President of Sales and Alliances at Transplace. We're talking about transportation challenges in the retail supply chain. Welcome, Matthew.
Thank you, Jean.
So from your perspective, what are some of the key transportation challenges for retailers?
I think that they align well with many of the overarching transportation challenges for really anyone in the North American shipping marketplace at the current time. And those would include the government still pending legislation and regulation associated with CSA 2010, or also known as the SMS methodology, and implications it's going to have with respect to the ability for discerning shippers to secure high-quality, safe, and reliable transportation motor carrier services. I think the implication of fuel and the increase that we've seen recently in terms of West Texas crude, and ultimately the downstream implication that that'll have on carriers and their ability to recoup costs of operation specific to fuel through surcharge programs that exist today. I think those are two of the overarching things that are certainly concerning from our vantage point at Transplace for the North American shipping public.
And what are you seeing retailers do to address these issues?
I think we're seeing them embrace a set of intelligent strategies, the vast majority of those that are kind of forward-leaning and leading. That would include rethinking their sourcing strategy, developing potentially longer-term contractual relationships with their underlying carriers. We had recent conversations not long ago with a large supplier to the retailers, and they were talking about an interesting strategy that would actually allow them to take forward position of truck capacity almost on a take or pay basis. So we're seeing some really kind of out-of-the-box thinking versus of a few years ago, where it really was it was squarely in the shipper's court to define the commercial interaction and specifically the economic relationships that they were going to have with their underlying carriers. We're seeing probably a slightly more carrier or capacity-friendly environment at the current time, with shippers making certain that they are constructing the right productive relationships, commercial relationships with their underlying carriers as these uncertainties unfold in front of us.
Given that we seem to continually see tighter delivery windows and a lot of compliance requirements on the part of shippers, what can providers do to really meet those requirements?
Well, I think that first I commend the retailers for their attempts to drive some level of rigor and structural adherence or compliance within the supply chain. At the end of the day, I think that this concept of a must-arrive-by date really it's pivotal in terms of everyone understanding what needs to take place around a specific defined date. Now, I know there's lots of gray area around that, and every retailer to some extent has their own uniqueness or flavor associated with that. But that sets in motion a set of downstream and upstream activities of which all of the various parties can start to play the game by. And I would say that it's imperative for the suppliers to those retailers, right, to fully understand what's expected from various levels or constituencies within the retailer's organization, their customer, right? Because merchandising might have a slightly different interpretation than the receiving warehouse or corporate transportation, whatever it might be. So a full understanding of the program, the upside reward and the downside risk for failure to comply, the failure to perform. And then I would think, many of the smart retailers have either gone out and selected third-party logistics services providers to help them achieve those performance targets, or those that are able have made capital investments and developed their own internal capabilities that really start all the way from the specific definition of those requirements to their underlying carriers, and then the development of electronic infrastructure that's going to allow them to communicate with those carriers and receive carrier status messages that will allow them to appropriately manage the expectation of straight up perfect performance versus something less than that with their retailers. And as now has become effectively, it's prevalent at this point, is the financial implications of lack of performance. I think have really started to, and the ensuing net down of profitability of product being sold through that channel, it really has started to bring C-level attention to the requirement for suppliers to comply to their customers' stated requirements.
And must-arrive dates, I'm sure, play into the retailers' the need they always have to manage their inventory better, to have better in-stock and less excess inventory.
Correct, and again, that's why I think that I commend them for kind of setting the drawing the line in the sand, if you will. That is the starting point of which all things need to take place within their organization to ultimately, meet your and my requirements as we're a consumer. Walk in, go to the shelf space, expect the product to be there, and we all know if it's not, right, too many times during any specific shopping experience, frustration will ensue, and we'll find another alternative to go and spend our dollars with. So, yeah, I think it makes great sense. It doesn't make it easy, but I think it is it's the right thing in terms of their supply chains and ultimately our quality of life here in the States.
Tell me a little bit more about how business intelligence plays into this, the role that plays in meeting shipper expectations.
I'll probably get the old adage wrong, but it's what gets measured gets improved, right? Or what gets measured gets fixed. So it still surprises me the number of shipping entities that we interact with that are receiving kind of a partial picture, right? It's kind of a partial mosaic in terms of understanding how they are truly performing. And back to your previous question, with the retailers now becoming even more discerning and exacting around the expected service and the ensuing financial penalties for lack of service or lack of compliance, it is absolutely imperative. It is the forgive the term, it's the ammunition of which the supplier brings to the gunfight potentially with their customer. Hopefully not a gunfight. Hopefully a pleasant interaction. But both sides need to be effectively armed. The retailer. Their customers are typically exceptionally data-driven. They've made significant scaled investments, starting from intelligence at the point of receipt at the dock, all the way through their supply chains and sortation capabilities. They have full understanding of how that supplier has performed within their internal supply chain, if their enterprise supply chain, if you will. But it is from our vantage point, as a third-party logistics services provider, we hear time and time again from a number of our consumer packaged goods customers that what once was a very adversarial, kind of half partial data, half telling of truths, and not that anyone was being anything other than truthful, but they didn't have the information, they didn't have the insights, they didn't understand where they were doing very well, where they were meeting, if not exceeding, the customer's expectations, and where they were also falling short of it. So these have turned from relatively confrontational interactions to very positive and constructive and improvement-oriented ones. So the basis of all that comes from insights and the ability to gather that information, cleanse that information, be confident in its accuracy, and then be able to analyze that data in various forms and fashions to present then to internal for improvement, to your third party or your carriers, as well as to, without question, your scorecard to your customers.
So obviously, as an IT provider, as a logistics provider, you have to have a really good IT infrastructure.
Correct. Yeah, we've actually we make a very significant year-over-year investment in making certain that we have a leading-edge transportation management system, and we've made a very significant multi-year investment in deploying the entire Microsoft Business Intelligence Suite, which we've received rave rewards from our customers, been noted by notable organizations that follow the space as really leading our competitive sector in terms of taking truly terabytes of data and turning it into actionable information to improve supply chain operations and efficiencies.
Looking ahead into the rest of 2011, are there issues that might impact transportation that your customers need to be aware of?
I think it goes back to your opening question, right? I think I would ask all that have a seat at the table, a stake in the game, to fully understand the government's proposed legislation and regulation associated with CSA 2010 and the SMS methodology and the downstream implications of that to the shipping public. So I would ask them all to take a moment, become educated, and then, if possible, take a position, right, and one that will be beneficial to all involved parties. So an enlightened and informed perspective is the most important, and then potentially to take action if they feel so moved to do so in support of the cause, which is ultimately to continue to increase the overall productivity and efficiency of our collective supply chain in the United States and without question globally, which will ultimately directly deliver better quality of life to you, me, and certainly our children.
All right. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you. My pleasure.
I've been speaking with Matthew Minner of Transplace. Thank you for watching.